Okay, so today we're going to go over rendering actions. Now, this is probably going to be the last group of the notes we do. Actually, check that that's still going over closed, but that's tomorrow, so probably the last bit of in-class notes that we've taken care of. Since Thursday and Friday will be all about practice, and your next project will come in. I want to say next week, but don't hold me to that because the next project will be also your semester final rather than just doing a test. So, we're going with rendering actions. Just really any sort of dynamic pose. Now that we work with the muscle form, it's important to know a few things that will always, at least almost always help. First thing, foreshortening. Now, we went over foreshortening when we took on the elements and principles of art. Foreshortening essentially just brings one aspect of the figure before the body. And what's really important is that foreshortening, really anything, can produce a sensation of power or distance and scale. And it doesn't have to be anything really huge. Like, this fist is huge just because, camera-wise, it is pointed at the viewer. It is closer to the viewer than the rest of the body. But because of that closeness, it makes everything look bigger in the foreground, and thus lends credence to the figure in the background. The power is here, the source of the power is here, to put it in layman's terms. Next up. Anchoring. Anchoring means that whatever your character is doing, if they are on the ground, something has to be keeping them steady. You can't stand in a pose and not have at least one leg acting as an anchor for the rest of the body. Otherwise, they're going to shake, they're going to teeter, they're going to look off balance at all times. And it does not matter how powerful the image may look. Now, as soon as both feet leave the ground, you don't have to worry about anchoring. As long as even one foot's on the ground, something needs to be flat and ready to keep the rest of the body in balance. All right, next up, value. Now in this case, my light source is kind of coming from multiple places here, but generally here and here. It's almost like cross-lighting. Value is one of the most important things when dealing with drawing bodies because it sets the mood for everything else. You could have any sort of drawing of, say, some guy or some chick throwing a kick, running down a field. If there's no value, it just gets lost in all the lines you're putting on the paper. And the figure is the only thing on the paper. It makes them feel flat and lifeless. We weren't talking with shading faces. The same applies to the body. Where your light source is, how close it is, determines the mood of that picture. Value sets the mood. Anchoring sets the position. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's talk about the ways you can show action. Now, this is all without doing backgrounds. So, single action is just one action, one figure. Now, with a single action, once again, shading is important, but really just depends on what action you're having them do. So, for example, let's see here. Not quite a thin man, but he's not going to be very muscular here. Some things to take into account. When you have a body part that is going towards the foreground, make sure that you're keeping that roundness. The lanky guy over here. And here's where we have to start going back on our previous lessons. Let's start putting faces on these guys. Apply my shading. Keep in mind, this is also a printout of a drawing I did earlier, so I will not be able to erase my skeleton. However, that does not stop you from drawing it directly and then doing it on your own. Shading can be done just about any time, so long as you have the base drawing done. Normally, I would not suggest doing shading before you finish all your line work, but honestly, at this point, we're really just focusing on the body here, and then we can shade the face after we have something down. That'll be enough. Not to worry about hair at this exact moment. So in this case, our light source is coming from over here. Now, if we're dealing with, say, a large body, let's say this was a sumo, then you also have to consider as much mass that as you put in your figure, that much mass has to be moving at all times. So if you're a sumo, let that blubber fly. I almost encourage using sumo just because it allows a lot more mass to work with, so you get a lot more chances of shade. So lanky build and sumo build. Close as you can see what I did there. For these far shots, though the expression is important, don't worry about too many details because, logically speaking, this figure is farther back, so you're not going to see every single detail of the face. Now, multi-action. Now this one I took from a football game we had weeks ago, and multi-action is just one action and any number of resulting actions. That doesn't matter if it's, let's say, tackling someone, running and bumping into people, even just running past someone and their reaction. That is still a reaction. So long as something is reacting to whatever your main figure is doing, that's what matters. What's it say? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Same thing. Use more muscular body for this one. But here's another bit of foreshortening right here. Notice how this leg is obviously shorter than it should be. Distance is very important to establish when doing action. So a little bit of foreshortening anywhere in the body helps. So foreshortening doesn't just make, say, something really big. It can also make things smaller, so it brings more emphasis to the leg that's attached to that foot, for example. Or for, say, one arm going back, it will look smaller to the viewer because, in that case, the body itself is the main focal point. So we're shortening up the arm to show that it's further back. Really, a bit that's already happening with the head here since you can't see the neck in that position. Now, another easy form of foreshortening is relying on your shading. If something's further back, you could technically cast it in black to show that's not close enough to get any details in. Yes, there we go. So, okay, moving on. All right, next thing we're going to go over is multi-action emotional, wide-angle action, close-up action, and close-up emotional. Now, not every action has to be something bombastic like, a mad sprint, a punch, a kick, a tackle. Some action is just all done in the face, and that's why we have more chest shots, mid shots, and close-ups that can really bring forth the idea that something is up. So I'm actually going to start over here with our close-up emotional. Now, this is where all the work you did on emotions really comes to effect here, because now without a body to really tell the story, you have to tell the story from expressions or from whatever the body you actually have in the picture. I'm not going to shade just yet. I just want to establish our other figure here first. Good morning. Okay, we're back. I'll make this one female. Some of you may wonder, hey, Mr. Scott, how do we draw those things? And that's immediately why I don't teach y'all how to draw the female anatomy. Not beyond the skeleton form. Will I change my mind? Maybe. Don't know yet. Some of you have not really shown me the maturity that you could handle it. If I do, I may post it as a separate video, but it is not something I'm going to deal with in class. Okay, let's see. Our lighting's coming from over here, so we can actually shade in half the head here. And now we shade our guy. In this case, now that we've established the light source is coming from over here, and he's so well into the foreground, we can actually exaggerate the amount of shadow we have here. Now remember, as this guy is in the foreground, he's going to have a darker, thicker outline. So if you ever find that you're drawing multiple things on your picture plane, and you're finding that things are starting to get lost in your line work, shading, line weight. Two things I'll always help to differentiate things. And really, this would apply the same as over here to action emotional. All we've done is just pull back the camera. All right, I'll just go into close-up action real quick, since technically we've already done wide-angle action, multi-action, emotional, and pass notes. And really, these two are connected with that whole, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction thing. Someone has to react to what your main figure is doing for it to work. So if someone's getting punched, you have to show them teetering back. If someone is getting shoved, you have to show someone falling back. You don't have to be on the ground. In fact, I would discourage anything from there's a punch and then the person just on the ground. Show the moment of the impact. Show the moment just after the impact. But don't show the end of the sequence with someone laid out and the other guy standing over them. Now for this one, let's see. There's a punch. It's closest, so we will give it more weight there. And a few little tension lines. Tension lines I have never mentioned before until now. Tension lines are just diagonals coming off of a figure in action. There's a few quick things that kind of show what direction that something is coming from, and just it gives a sense of ferocity. 20 minutes. Let's try to wrap this up. Now, when someone is actually getting punched in the face, you have to consider how a face looks when it is scrunched up. Because really what you're asking for here is for the face to contort around the point of impact. Everything just kind of just ripples. It happens. The bone is not moving unless someone hits you hard enough that they have broken something. You have to worry about the structure of the skull underneath. What we're thinking of is how the rest of the body is responding. Now, generally speaking, the eye that is closest to the point of impact will be closed or be very slightly open. Depending on the impact, that punch will resonate across the entire face. So it's not like your eyes are going to move, your nose is really going to move, your mouth, your eyebrows, and the flesh of the face is what shows that immediate impact. Now, this only works at the moment of impact. Once the hand disconnects, the face will immediately start to fit itself back where it's supposed to, barring, any swelling. Shading in there. And body type, I'm kind of using a American Standard here. There you go. So once you go over this today, your task really isn't about the notes, but it's about practicing what all this is. Use YouTube videos. Tussle with your siblings. Tussle with your dog. The point is to really just look at the actions that go about normally. Don't look at superhero stuff. Unless you're really looking for some fight scenes. Look for dramas. Think less, Spider-Man, Captain America, and think more Days of Our Lives. Especially as not every action can be bombastic. The subtle stuff will always carry more weight than the harsh stuff. And really, that is all I have to share with you today. Even in class, notes will be relatively short, and then we're going to go into guided practice. Now, tomorrow during remote day, I will go over how to put clothes on the body, tight clothes, baggy clothes, all that. So when we get to your project, then you'll have pretty much every tool that you'll need to draw a scene of just people. And I'm not worried about backgrounds just yet. We'll worry about backgrounds when we get to perspective after we're done with anatomy, which, like that, from the looks of it, we will be getting into perspective and all that when we come back from winter break. All right, y'all have a good day, and good luck.